We'll go on the record. This is a deposition of Anne-Marie Tomasini conducted by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform under the authority granted to it pursuant to House Rule 10. Accordingly, House Rule 10 grants the committee broad jurisdiction for the committee to conduct investigations of any matter at any time. In this Congress, Chairman Comer initially requested a voluntary interview of Ms. Tomasini on May 22nd, 2025, as part of the committee's investigation into President Biden's alleged mental and physical decline, the Biden White House's efforts to hide that from the American people, and any unauthorized executive actions. The committee is considering legislative solutions to address these issues, including exercising its authority under the 25th Amendment to the Constitution. I will enter the initial request by Chairman Comer as Exhibit 1. On June 6, 2025, counsel for Ms. Tomasini confirmed with the Oversight Committee that Ms. Tomasini would sit for a transcribed interview on July 18th. On July 14th, counsel for Ms. Tomasini, citing the nature and purpose of the proceeding, requested the scheduled transcribed interview be changed to a deposition. On July 15th, Chairman Comer issued a subpoena for Ms. Tomasini to appear for this deposition. I will mark both the subpoena and the accompanying cover letter to Ms. Tomasini as Exhibit 2. The committee noticed today's deposition on July 15th, 2025. I will mark the notice for this deposition as Exhibit 3. Can the witness please state her name and spell her last name for the record?
Anne-Marie Tomasini, Tomasini.
Thank you. My name is Jake Greenberg, and I am the Chief Counsel for Investigations for Chairman James Comer. Under the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform's rules, you are allowed to have counsel present to advise you during this deposition. Do you have counsel representing you in a personal capacity present with you today?
Yes.
Will counsel please identify themselves for the record?
Jonathan Sue for Ms. Tomasini.
For the record, starting with the majority staff, can the additional staff members please introduce themselves with their names, titles, and affiliations?
Mitch Benzine, General Counsel for the majority.
Margaret Harker, Senior Advisor for the majority.
Sharon, Senior Professional Staff for the majority. Ellison Tolman, Counsel for the majority. Mallory Kogar, Chief Clerk for the majority.
John Clark, Law Clerk for the majority. Billy Grant, Counsel for the majority.
Ms. Tomasini, before we,
These folks are
with counsel, thank you. Ms. Tomasini, before we begin, I would like to go over the ground rules for this deposition. The questioning will proceed in rounds. The majority will ask questions for an hour, and then the minority will have an opportunity to ask questions for an hour if they so choose. To the extent members have questions for the witness, they will be propounded during their side's respective rounds. Do you understand?
Yes.
The clock will stop if you need to confer with counsel. Your counsel is speaking, and when members or staff are speaking during the opposing side's round of questions. We will alternate back and forth until there are no more questions. There's a court reporter taking down everything I say and everything you say to make a written record of the interview. For the record to be clear, please wait until the staffer questioning you finishes each question before you begin your answer, and the staffer will wait until you finish your response before proceeding to the next question. Further, to ensure the court reporter can properly record this deposition, please speak clearly, concisely, and slowly. Also, the court reporter cannot record nonverbal answers such as nodding or shaking your head, so it is important that you answer each question with an audible verbal answer. Do you understand?
Yes.
Exhibits may be entered into the record. Majority exhibits will be identified numerically. Minority exhibits will be identified alphabetically. We want you to answer our questions in the most complete and truthful manner possible, so we will take our time. If you have any questions or do not fully understand the question, please let us know. We will attempt to clarify, add context to, or rephrase our questions. If we ask about specific conversations or events in the past and you are unable to recall the exact words or details, you should testify to the substance of those conversations or events to the best of your recollection. If you recall only a part of a conversation or event, you should give us your best recollection of those events or parts of conversations that you do recall. Do you understand?
Yes.
You are required by law to answer questions from Congress truthfully. This also applies to questions posed by congressional staff in this interview. Do you understand?
Yes.
If at any time you knowingly make false statements, you could be subject to criminal prosecution, including but not limited to perjury. Do you understand?
Yes.
This includes both knowingly providing false testimony, but also stating that you do not recall or remember something when in fact you do. Do you understand?
Yes.
Furthermore, you cannot tell half-truths or exclude information necessary to make statements accurate. You are required to provide all information that would make your response truthful. A deliberate failure to disclose information can constitute a false statement. Do you understand?
Yes.
Is there any reason you are unable to provide truthful testimony in today's interview?
No.
Please note that if you wish to assert a privilege over any statement today, that assertion must comply with the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Pursuant to that, Committee Rule 16C1 states for the chair to consider assertions of privilege over testimony or statements, witnesses, or entities must clearly state the specific privilege being asserted and the reason for the assertion on or before the scheduled date of testimony or appearance. I will enter as Exhibit 4 a letter dated June 24th, 2025, to your counsel from Gary Lakowski, Deputy Counsel to the President, informing you that President Trump has determined not to assert executive privilege over issues regarding your assessment of former President Biden's fitness for the office of the President and your knowledge of who exercised executive powers during his administration. Additionally, President Trump has determined he will not assert immunity to preclude you from testifying before the committee. For the purposes of the deposition, objections must be stated concisely in a non-argumentative and non-suggestive manner. If you refuse to answer a question to preserve a privilege, the committee may seek a ruling from the chair. If the chair overrules any such objection, the witness shall be ordered to answer. If the witness continues to refuse to answer a question despite being ordered to do so, the witness may be subject to sanction. Do you understand?
Yes.
Ordinarily, we take a 5-minute break at the end of each hour of questioning, but if you need to take a longer break or a break before that, please let us know and we will be happy to accommodate. However, to the extent that there is a pending question, we would ask that you finish answering the question before we take the break. Do you understand?
Yes.
Finally, I will note for everyone here today that the contents of what we discuss in the deposition today are confidential under the House deposition regulations. Under the rules, the chairman and the ranking minority member shall consult before any release of testimony or transcripts, including portions thereof. This means it is a violation of House and committee rules to disclose content of the deposition prior to its official release. For this reason, the marked exhibits that we will use today will remain with the court reporter so that they can go into the official transcript, and any copies of those exhibits will be kept at the table or returned to us when we wrap up. Do you have any questions before we begin?
Do you have any questions, Ms. Tomasini?
No.
Jake, are we permitted to make an opening statement?
No, sir. Can the reporter please swear in the witness?
Will you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
My clock reads 10:11, and the majority's hour will begin now. Ms. Tomasini, did you ever advise President Biden on the handling of classified documents found in his garage?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
The record will reflect that Ms. Tomasini has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Ms. Tomasini, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Tomasini, did President Joe Biden or anyone else in the White House instruct you to conceal or destroy classified material found at President Biden's home or office?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
The record will reflect that Ms. Tomasini has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Ms. Tomasini, to be clear, are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Tomasini, have you ever conspired with anyone in the White House to hide information regarding the Biden family's business dealings?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
The record will reflect that Ms. Tomasini has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Ms. Tomasini, to be clear, are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Tomasini, did Joe Biden, a member of his family, or anyone at the White House ever instruct you to lie regarding his health at any time, including but not limited to in your testimony to Congress today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Tomasini has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Ms. Tomasini, to be clear, are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Ms. Tomasini, is it your intention to decline to answer all questions put to you today by the committee on the basis of the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination?
On behalf of Ms. Tomasini, I can so confirm.
Thank you. Does the minority have questions for the witness?
We do.
Okay, thank you. We'll go off the record.
We can go on the record. Good morning, Ms. Tomasini.
Good morning.
Mr. Sue, I understand you had a statement that you wish to make for the record. Would you like to do that now?
Yes, thank you very much. Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Garcia, and members of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Ms. Tomasini has fulfilled her obligations to the committee by appearing before you today. A proud native of Massachusetts, Ms. Tomasini was an accomplished college athlete at Boston University, from which she graduated. In her professional career, Ms. Tomasini has served with distinction both in the nonprofit and private sectors in the greater Boston area, as well as at the White House, most recently as Assistant to the President and Deputy Chief of Staff. The committee has asked Ms. Tomasini to testify in connection with an investigation into use of the Autopen. There is no actual evidence of wrongdoing by Ms. Tomasini, and President Biden has already confirmed that he made all decisions concerning the grants of clemency at the end of his term. It is well known that there is an ongoing federal criminal investigation into this matter by the Department of Justice, ordered by the current White House. This past week, the chairman suggested that it is, quote, very possible, end quote, the investigation could generate criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. Under these circumstances, any reasonable person would seriously consider an invocation of their Fifth Amendment rights. The law is clear that there is absolutely no basis to suggest an invocation of the Fifth Amendment is evidence of wrongdoing. In Ohio v. Reiner, the U.S. Supreme Court explained that one of the Fifth Amendment's basic functions is to protect innocent men who otherwise might be ensnared by ambiguous circumstances. In recent and historical congressional investigations, persons across the political spectrum have invoked their Fifth Amendment rights to decline to answer questions from Congress. For these reasons, Ms. Tomasini respectfully declines to answer the committee's questions in today's deposition, and thank you for the opportunity to provide this statement.
I will now ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit A an April 1st, 2025 New York Times article titled "Trump Allied Prosecutor Looks to Undermine Biden Pardons," which describes a Justice Department investigation that, quote, uses the levers of federal law enforcement to try to harass Mr. Biden's family and allies and undermine his decisions as president while scoring political points with President Trump, end quote. I would also like to ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit B a May 13th, 2025 ABC News article titled "Ed Martin, Trump's DOJ pardon attorney, says he'll review Biden's outgoing pardons," which quotes Mr. Martin as saying that if the targets of his investigation, quote, can be charged, we'll charge them, but if they can't be charged, we will name them, and we will name them, end quote. Next, I would like to ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit C a May 20th, 2025 Truth Social post by President Trump, in which President Trump describes the use of the Autopen during the Biden administration as, quote, treason at the highest level, end quote, and writes that, quote, something very severe should happen to these treasonous thugs, end quote. Next, I'll ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit D the majority's letter to Ms. Tomasini that was sent 2 days later on May 22nd, 2025. I will now ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit E a presidential memorandum dated June 4th, 2025, which, among other things, directs counsel to the president in consultation with the attorney general to investigate the allegations that the majority has leveled in this matter. I'm also going to ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit F a June 5th, 2025 NBC News story titled, Trump Says He Doesn't Have Evidence of Any Illegal Autopen Use by the Biden White House. Now I'll ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit G a July 13th, 2025 New York Times article titled, Biden Says He Made the Clemency Decisions That Were Recorded with Autopen. I'm also going to ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit H a July 15th, 2025 NBC News article titled, Lead Investigator into Biden's Use of an Autopen Signed Letters with a Digital Signature. This article has been redacted to remove the names of Oversight Committee staff. Finally, I'm going to ask the court reporter to mark as Exhibit I a July 16th, 2025 story in Politico regarding this investigation, which states in part, quote, House Oversight Chair James Comer said it was very possible the investigation could result in criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, end quote. We can go off the record.
All right, on the record. Ms. Tomasini, considering your invocation of the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination pursuant to the terms of the subpoena, you are excused. We'll go off the record.